For our safety, I will not tell you our last names or our specific subdivision we lived in. Things are still crazy, so let me start from the beginning. My name is Angela, and my husband's name is Rubio. My husband started taking an interest in prepping a couple of years ago, so we decided to start getting a few things here and there to develop some kind of stash. I thought it wasn't exactly needed, but Rubio felt like we should be prepared just in case. He even decided to rename his Facebook page Mr. Bugout. He would spend countless hours on YouTube and websites researching tools, foods, techniques, and theories. What he was finding was actually a little intriguing to me, so I let him think I was interested while he rambled on about who knows what. We spent the next couple of years building our knowledge for survival and prepping for various events. We installed a large 275-gallon freshwater tank in the storage shed so that we could be prepared. We figured we would head to the hill should something really big happen, but stay put if something small happened. But little did we know the events that transpired would be the events that tested us to our core. Let me catch you up to where we are now. Day 1. My husband and I wake up at 6 a.m., like is our routine every morning. He immediately goes to the bathroom, and I go downstairs and start the process of making coffee. Like normal, Rubio jumps in the shower and is singing. As the coffee pot is about 1/3 full, it shuts off. I think, of course it died in the middle of brewing my much-needed coffee. I tried flipping the switch a few times, but to no avail. Rubio yells from the shower to turn the light back on, but obviously I'm not up there. As I'm making my way back upstairs, the stairwell light won't turn on. I find it a crazy coincidence that the coffee pot, the stairwell light, and the bathroom light all stopped working. Then it hits me. We must have blown a fuse in the fuse panel. But as I get to the bathroom, Rubio is still in the shower, but tells me the water just stopped coming out. He asked if I paid the utility bills, and of course, I did. He gets out and throws some clothes on and heads into the garage to check the panel. All fuses are still on. This is very strange. We walk outside and see one of the neighbors standing outside. It was still a little early, so he was the only one out. He walks over and asks if our power is out. Rubio told him it was. We figured that it must have been an accident that knocked out power. We went back inside and grabbed our FM radio and turned it on. But the strangest thing happened. It was silent. It wasn't working. So Rubio exclaimed that he suspected he knew what the problem was. He ran into the garage and tried to start the car. Nothing. He said it must have been an EMP attack. I rolled my eyes and said, "What is the likelihood of that?" He said, "Well, what is the likelihood that all of our electricity-powered objects stopped working, and the neighbor had the same problem?" That's when we realized we needed to confirm what was happening. I grabbed my phone, and it was dead. So was Rubio's. We looked at each other and realized that we are on our own. We had always read that getting out of a city was the only course of wisdom in a disaster or vast disabling situation. However, we were smack in the middle of a large subdivision, right in a big city. So getting out would be next to impossible, or at least make us massive targets. So we decided we needed to shelter in place. The rest of the day was spent closing off the windows and doors and making sure everything was locked, as well as making sure we organized the fresh and frozen food to consume first. We settled in and decided to go to bed early to rest up and relax from all the added stress. Day 2. We get up and I make some instant coffee from a bottle of water and a packet. Definitely not optimal, but hey, in survival, beggars can't be choosers. We eat a breakfast bar and chill out to reserve our energy. Later on, Rubio went into the garage where most of our preps were and got out our shortwave radios. We had a few solar chargers we bought that were recommended on YouTube on the StepOneSurvival channel. So we got those and set them out on a windowsill to get them charging. Since we didn't need to charge our phones, we used them to charge our radios, flashlights, and electric lighters for cooking. After a couple of hours, Rubio took one of the radios and flicked it on. It worked. It wasn't affected by the EMP. We got the Faraday defense bags that were reviewed by YouTubers Buffalo Chip and Sensible Prepper, and they worked. We turned it to the police frequencies and we just listened. Conversation came over the waves confirming that 5 coordinated EMP attacks occurred, and the entire US and Canada were disabled. We knew we were hunkered down for the long haul. The only question left unanswered was, how are we going to survive our neighbors? Day 5. As had been our routine now for the last several days, we wake up and have some instant coffee and a bite of breakfast. Rubio goes upstairs and looks out the windows to keep an eye on the exterior. Everything is pretty quiet. I go out to our storage shed to refill the 2-gallon jugs of water we use for cooking and drinking. After I shut and lock the door, I stopped. I noticed the neighbor behind the tree line about 3 houses away was looking at me out of their window. She mouthed something and her husband came up to the window. I got scared and quickly went back inside. Our shed is about 20 feet from the back door, and there's a sparse tree line and a short hedgerow on the side. All I could hope was that she didn't see what I had in my hands. I told Rubio about what happened, and we agreed to go out after dark to fill the jugs for the next day so that we could stay safe. The rest of the main part of the day was uneventful. When it became evening, we heard a loud bang. Rubio immediately ran to the side window to peek through the blinds to see what was happening. The neighbor next to us was pacing around in his front yard. His front door had a big shoe imprint on it. It looked like someone tried to kick his door in, and he fired a warning shot to the ground. Needless to say, we were on edge. That neighbor was known to hunt and store lots of extra meat in his freezers for use later in the year. We didn't know if the two were connected, but we knew we needed to be vigilant. Day 9. We were woken up early this morning by several loud banging noises. I thought for sure someone was trying to get in. Rubio went to the side window upstairs to see what was happening. To his horror, he saw the neighbor laying injured on his front porch. We knew he had been assaulted. There were several men running out of his house carrying bags of something. We could only assume it was his food. We couldn't call the police because the phones were down. So I got on the radio to the police frequencies, and the only thing there was silence. It's only been 9 days, we thought to ourselves. But it has been 9 days of no food deliveries to the grocery stores, no ability to get the food from the stores to the homes, and no running water or power. The police were no doubt inundated with the extent of the catastrophe. We knew we were on our own, and it appears that our neighbors are taking matters into their own hands for survival by either fleeing like the neighbor who was robbed, or they are raiding homes. Day 15. It was pretty much chaotic outside at this point. There were several homes that appeared forcibly raided. People who weren't even from our neighborhood were walking up and down the street all day and all night. Stress levels were very high for us. We made 2 excellent decisions and 1 fatal mistake. We never opened the garage door to show the vehicle was there or to expose our stores of food and supplies. We also didn't make it known we were home by having our windows open or walking around outside. The 1 fatal mistake was the decision I made earlier to go out and get the water during the day. That neighbor kept note. On the morning of day 12, 3 days ago, Rubio heard a very familiar squeaking noise. He carefully peeked out of the rear blinds to find the door to our shed broken open and the water tank laying empty on its side. The several sets of footprints in the dew-soaked grass led away to the tree line and then disappeared. He knew the neighbors had raided what was in there. But why didn't they break in the house? I didn't know the answer. Whatever the reason was, we were still secure in our home. Rubio was afraid someone would see us, so without my knowledge, he woke up in the middle of the night to a bad dream about 4 days ago. He couldn't sleep because he couldn't shake that feeling of dread and paranoia that we were going to be a target. So he took the jugs and slowly went back and forth until he filled both bathtubs with fresh water and topped off the emergency 15-gallon tank in the garage. He filled up the 2 jugs he used and locked the shed back. Probably 100 or more gallons were still left at that time, but we had all we could fit in the house. So each day we used the jugs and refilled them out of the bathtub and then went outside after dark and topped the tub off and refilled the jugs as needed. I was so thankful he couldn't sleep that night. Otherwise, we would have only 17 gallons of water in the house maximum to survive on. We could hear lots of yelling all day. Someone came up on our porch and jiggled the knob. Then they yelled to get off the porch. This house is vacant and dangerous. Rubio had heard that a technique in times like this is to print out fake warnings that your home is vacant and condemned due to some crazy reason. He had printed out and laminated signs that said our home was vacant and condemned for black mold. The only neighbor immediately around us that knew we were there was the first victim of the criminals that raided his home. Now he is gone. Nobody else knew we were there. Rubio's tactic worked. We stayed in place with a renewed sense of security and determination to survive. That feeling quickly departed when an announcement came across the police channels that a house-to-house search for resources is to be carried out throughout the city. We knew we were in for it. Day 25. So the sign likely won't work today to keep anyone out. Early this morning, Rubio was upstairs examining the perimeter, and what he saw filled him with fear. He ran downstairs and told me we had to get everything we could together and hide in the garage attic space. There was a large group of armed people, some in obviously stolen police garb and ripped up military clothes, walking down through the neighborhood, raiding every house in their path. We grabbed our EDC bags and filled them with food and threw them in the small attic space, and we grabbed the 2 full gallons of water and put them up there. We drank as much water as we could before we heard them at the house next door. We quickly grabbed a handful of cans and the radios and solar charger and hurried into the attic. Rubio got the door pulled up and locked from the inside just as the front door busted open. We could hear them yelling to search every room. We could hear them going through everything in the home. Some came into the garage and turned it upside down. One of them yelled to the group leader that they found the jackpot. One of our food cabinets was still full of supplies and food. They raided everything and dug off the water tank. The leader yelled for everyone to stop. Suddenly, there was silence. We stayed completely still. We felt our lives were in grave danger. They were obviously driven by hunger and anger over the events that led us all here. I knew they weren't in their right mind. The leader proceeded to say that somebody was bugging out here and they must be alive. He yelled that the hawkish people should pay for hoarding their food. They got worked into a frenzy. We could hear that they all ran out yelling down the streets, and we could hear the next house being broken into. Rubio and I decided that we couldn't leave the attic. Thankfully, our attic had a medium-sized breather vent on the side. We were able to loosen it and use the opening to dispose of our waste. We had to ration the food and water to make it stretch as long as possible. We knew sleep would be escaping us. Day 30. Rubio woke me up as I was growing weaker and weaker. My health was starting to deteriorate, as was Rubio's. We ate and drank our last ration that morning. Rubio would sit there beside me and call out for help on every federal and state channel on the radio, but to no avail. He refused to give up. Our days were now spent reflecting on our lives and wondering what would happen next. That night we went to sleep and both of us held each other tightly. We were out of food and water, but we had each other. Day 31. I woke up before Rubio. I moved around a little to wake him up. Suddenly, there was a loud, rhythmic, deep sound all around. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but Rubio perked up and started excitedly laughing. I couldn't figure out what was going on. He said that it was a helicopter. They must be looking for anyone alive. Rubio quickly lowered down the attic door and scurried down. He ran outside yelling for help. Next thing I knew, Rubio came back in and told me to come down quickly. I complied immediately. It was a search and rescue team. They had picked up the radio transmission from our radio and were trying to pinpoint where it was coming from. They lowered several medics, got me into a basket, and got us into the helicopter. They worked rather quickly as there were still criminal elements around that had survived, and they were growing more and more aggressive. After a few minutes, we were off to an unaffected hospital to treat us properly. As it turns out, some areas did not get affected nearly as bad as other places, and the government was organizing rescue efforts to gather survivors into safe areas. This whole ordeal taught us a very valuable lesson. That lesson is the importance of being prepared. Those YouTube channels were a lifesaver for us. We were not survivalist nut jobs, but we did prepare ourselves to a reasonable degree and learned what to do for a variety of events. I'm so thankful that we didn't fall into the trap of relying on someone else for our safety and supplies. We put forth efforts to be ready for a few weeks. From this point forward, we will always prepare for something to happen. I'm so thankful to now call my husband Mr. Bugout. Thank you everyone for listening and watching. My name is Matt. I hope you enjoyed my story. Your generosity and support is much appreciated, so please hit that subscribe button and like my video and share to your social media. I'll catch everyone in the next video.